Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we have a beer that I think will be really quite interesting on a few counts actually. So we're going to continue on with this kind of Swedish Christmas mini-series that I'm doing for you, and we're going to return to a brewery that I've always been quite impressed with, mainly for the fact that they try a lot of different styles of beer and they always turn out to be really quite authentic actually. So we're going to have a look at one of my favourite styles of German traditional beer, and this is one that they seem to release every year for the kind of Christmas releases through Systembolaget. So for this review then, we are going to return to Eskilstuna Ölkultur for about the 5th time I think, and we're having a taste of the Eskilstuna Julbock today, which comes in at 6.5% ABV, and it is a German style Doppelbock, but a little lighter in alcohol compared to what you will actually find from the likes of the the Ayinger Celebrator, or the Paulaner Salvator, or the Augustiner Maximator and things like this. This one is a little bit lighter in its alcohol content as far as I can see, but really curious to see how this one turns out. The Doppelbock is one of my favourite styles of German beer, along with the Helles, the Dunkel, the Rauch beers. I kind of got into beer on German beer, so I always enjoy trying different German styles of beer brewed in other places. The thing that I'm particularly curious about with this one is to see how authentic it is compared to the German ones, because I've noticed that a lot of Swedish Doppelbocks tend to be a little bit more kind of chocolatey and bready compared to how the German ones are, which I've always found are a little bit more brown sugary. So hopefully Eskilstuna Ölkultur have pulled off another really authentic one, because when they get it right they tend to be really pretty damn good at it actually. So I really hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer, and we'll see how we get on. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Eskilstuna Ölkultur before. No doubt I will add some more in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Eskilstuna Ölkultur then. So on to my brewery notes. So Eskilstuna Ölkultur was founded by the homebrewers Arto Okura, Kauko Laakkonen, Thomas Humla, Bosse Gustafsson and Anders Olsen. But these guys met at the Swedish Homebrewing Championships, and they decided that they wanted to give Eskilstuna a brewery once again, and together they managed to rent a building in the town centre and establish a beer bar, which opened at Christmas back in 2003. Once the bar began to do really well, they thought they should actually begin to brew some beers for themselves, and so in 2006 they officially founded Eskilstuna Ölkultur, and in 2008 they moved to a larger premises because they outgrew their original brewery and bar, and they were helped by an army of volunteers to get the new premises up and running. So they received their brewing equipment from China in September of 2008, and they've continued to expand the brewing capacity and the range of beers that they do ever since. In 2018 they brewed around 130,000 litres of beer, and for a long time it was Anders Olsen who was the main brewer, but they now have somebody else who has taken over the brewing duties, and he and Arto Okura are involved in running the business side of things at the moment as well. But like I said to you, these guys try a whole host of different styles of beer. I've had Irish red ales, I've had a Scotch ale from them, I've had a Belgian blonde, a quadruple, and now we're going to have a go at the a German Doppelbock as well. I've not tried like a New England IPA from these guys before, or a West Coast IPA. I think that's probably what I need to do next, to be honest, because it has been more sort of traditional styles of beer that I've had from them so far. But that's one of the things that I really admire about this brewery. They are willing to try different styles, and they always tend to do pretty damn good at it actually. I mean, the only criticism of one of the beers that I've had from these guys so far was with their quadruple. It was really nice, but they'd filtered it so it didn't quite feel as thick as it might do otherwise. But other than that, I've been very impressed with all of the beers that these guys have done. So if you find yourself in Stockholm, you might want to take a little trip out to Eskilstuna, out to the west, and have a little look and see what the town's all about. It's supposed to be very pretty, and I will see if I can film an out and about video at their bar at some point in the future. That's definitely one that's on my list to do at some point fairly soon. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Eskilstuna Ölkultur for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different things that these guys have done so far. So anyway, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. You can see the artwork here is pretty typical of what you would expect of Eskilstuna Ölkultur. There you can see the brewery symbol on the top there, which is basically the outline of their kind of brew pub, if it's right to call it that, their bar essentially. And you can see there is the little goat for the Doppelbock on the top there. So the story behind the goat and the Doppelbock is kind of interesting, because it came about sort of by accident. The Doppelbock, or the Bock style of beer rather, I think it was just the single Bock, it was developed in Saxony in Germany, or Sachsen as the Germans would call it, and I'm sure the town was actually called like Einbeck or something like that. But when they took this beer down to Munich, the Germans used to, or the Bavarians basically used to call it Einbock, and that's where the term Bock beer actually came from. It kind of came about just because of Bavarian pronunciation rather than Saxon pronunciation. So yeah, kind of an interesting little story there. It was my friend Daniel in Bamberg in Germany who told me about that. So yeah, kind of cool. But you can see plain gold bottle cap on this one. It tells you a little bit about the style on the back here, that this is a, you know, it basically tells you it's a very strong kind of lager beer, because this is basically a very strong Dunkel lager almost, yeah, it tells you it's from the year 1600, which is about right there, and it just gives you some kind of description of the flavours and stuff. But that's of course the whole point of doing these videos. But yeah, 6.5% ABV. As I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit lower in alcohol than some of the ones you will find down in Germany, but we'll see how we get on with it nonetheless. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Eskilstuna Julbock from Eskilstuna Ölkultur. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening, so we'll get it out and into the glass then. And yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from a Doppelbock, that's pouring a lovely, nice, dark, I would say kind of, that's almost a kind of rosewoody colour, this one actually. Now, as I was saying earlier, most of the Swedish Doppelbocks that I've come across before have been quite chocolatey, and I can tell you already from the aroma of this one, I've got a feeling this one is going to be really authentic towards the German ones. You can see that there was a very thin kind of quarter finger of a, I would say, sort of fawny coloured head on this one. That's just faded away to be a very thin foamy layer. I think I maybe poured it a bit too well. I maybe needed to pour it a little bit more aggressively, but you can see there is just a nice little layer of head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, quite a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there. And that's, you know, that's just going to fade away, as I say, to be a very thin foamy layer. If I shine the light through this beer, it's actually a very dark sort of ruby colour, this one, but to you on the camera it's going to appear more like a sort of rosewoody kind of colour, to be honest with you, but it is a really, really dark sort of ruby colour, this beer. So overall, in terms of its appearance, a little bit darker than I've come across from some other Doppelbocks, and I do wonder that will be down to the type of malt that they've used in this. Either that or they've done a longer boil with this beer, but we'll just need to see how we get on with that actually. But overall, in terms of its appearance, nothing too surprising about it, just a little bit darker than you would find from some German takes on this style. So let's look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, so when you go a bit closer into this aroma, you can really smell some of that nice brown bready German malty quality to this one. One of the things I always loved about Germany was the bakeries. When I lived in Heidelberg, you could always go to the bakery and get yourself like a pretzel or a, you know, a little wurst roll or something like this. It was always awesome to go down and do that on a Sunday or a Saturday, just whenever you liked, to be honest. But the brown bready notes in this are very, very nice. It almost comes across like a well-fired kind of toasty, bread crusty quality, to be honest with you. One of the other things I'll say about the aroma with this beer is there's a hell of a lot of brown sugar, and you would expect that from this style. But going by the aroma now, I think that this one's had a bit of a longer boil to it, because you can really smell that these brown sugars in this beer are almost just a little bit really well fired and kind of toasty. They really are, and when you make the boil a little bit longer in a brew, it sort of caramelises the sugar a little bit more. That would also explain a little bit of the colour of this one, because the aroma comes out having everything that you'd expect. With some of the Doppelbocks you'll find in Sweden, they're a little bit more bready. It's almost a little bit like a Czech take on a Doppelbock. If you compare, for example, the Czech Czerny and the German Dunkel, the German Dunkel is always a little bit more kind of crisp and brown sugary, whereas the Czech version has all of that, but it's a little bit more bready. This one really doesn't have the breadiness that I've come across in some other Swedish Doppelbocks, but the brown sugary notes just feel that little bit darker. It could, going by the aroma as well, I do wonder if there's maybe a little bit of like Carafa malt in there, because it really comes across as having a very toasty, well-fired bread crust to it as well. So it might be a combination. It might be a little bit of Carafa malt, and it might also be a little bit of a longer boil. Maybe, as I say, a combination of both maybe. But yeah, really a nice kind of well-fired, toasty bread crust in there. A bit of brown bread too. The brown sugars are quite nice, really thick and caramelly, a bit toasty, but also a little bit of a sweeter note on the front of the nose. It's kind of a little bit like a biscuity note that comes out of this beer as well. You'll also get a little bit of a kind of woody undertone to this one, as well as some kind of nutty qualities as well. But this beer is definitely all about the malt, to be honest with you. It really is. But going by the aroma, I do think there's German malts in this. I'm not in too much doubt about that. Probably Weirmann malts from Bamberg, I would think. Especially, there is something in my mind that's just telling me there's Carafa in here. I wouldn't be surprised about that in the slightest. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, you have a little bit of a kind of earthy note to this one. It's that typical light earthiness that you'll get from Hallertau or Tittnanger, you know, the German noble hops. You can pick up a little bit of a floral aromaticity to the beer, and there's also a wee touch of kind of grassiness to it as well, which is, you know, exactly what you would expect from Hallertau or Tittnanger hops. It could also be that they've used a little bit of Northern Brewer. That's quite a popular hop to use in German Doppelbocks because of the fruity characters that it gives off. So it could be that as well. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, this one, you've got quite a nice little bit of a kind of, there's a bit of a sort of figgy note to this beer. There's not really a raisiny sharpness or anything like that. It's more of a juicy kind of figgy note, perhaps some black currants and blackberries there a bit later on, but maybe also a little bit of like a datey, pruny kind of aroma in there too. But overall, I would say that this Doppelbock is quite, it doesn't have the most pungent aroma you're going to come across. It's more complex and quite light, to be honest with you. But knowing this brewery, I think I've said the same about some of their other beers. The aroma doesn't jump out the glass all that much. It's more, you'll get more out of it in the flavour for sure. But in terms of authenticity of the aroma, I think they've got it pretty good here. It smells a little bit more, it leans a little bit more towards that roasty, toasty, bread crusty side of things. So I'm really curious to see how this turns out. So without further ado then, let's have a taste of this beer and see how we go on. As I always say though, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you get stuck in. But this one is the Eskilstuna Julbock, a German style Doppelbock, coming in at 6.5% from Eskilstuna Ölkultur in Eskilstuna, just out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. Yeah, right. Let's just say this one really is very authentic. So thumbs up to Eskilstuna Ölkultur for this. This is a really well done beer. It's kind of interesting that, because in the aroma, it really gives you, it really does give you the impression that it's going to be a little bit bready and things, just because of how prominent that sort of toasty, bread crusty note is. But it really captures what you'd expect of this style really quite nicely. It's a very well balanced beer, this one. It almost does come across like a lager though. It's very sort of light in how it goes down, but I like that about it. It's like a very flavourful, malty, quite light beer. So it's an interesting combination, this one, but that's probably due to the fact that it's 6.5% rather than like 7 or something like that. Doppelbocks, as I say, are usually about 7 from what memory tells me. I'm sure I've seen a couple that are like 6.8, so it's not too far off what some of them can be, I think, but yeah. But yeah, it's really nicely done, this one. It's got everything you would kind of want from the style, actually. It does lean a little bit more towards that bready side of things, but the further you go into the aftertaste, that's when you really start to get the brown sugar that you would expect of this style. The level of breadiness that it has is a little bit more akin to like a German Dunkel. to be honest with you, or a Czech cherny. It's got a little bit of that. It does have a little bit of the cherny dunkel type lageriness to it, if that makes sense. That said though, as I mentioned earlier, this beer is a type of lager. It goes through a sort of cold fermentation. I think it's usually 4 degrees that you ferment lagers at, actually. But it's it really is nice. This gets a thumbs up from me. I wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So yeah, let's try and break the flavour of this one down then. So middle of your palate, it has got a really nice sort of bready, that, you know, it's got that smooth kind of brown bready quality that just blankets the middle of your tongue. You do pick up more towards the edge of your tongue. You will pick up a little bit of that kind of slightly toasty, bread crusty note to the beer. But as you move more into the centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of thick brown sugary quality to this one. It's not too sweet. You can tell, and I'm going by the way the brown sugars are coming out in this, I do think they've put this beer under a little bit more of a kind of longer boil, to be honest with you, but it works like that. But yeah, you can feel this really nice kind of thick brown sugary, almost treacly type flavour in the middle of your palate. But as you come further out from that, you do start to get a little kind of biscuity tone, and the further that you go into the aftertaste with this beer as well, you're also, pardon me, going to get a little bit of a kind of sweeter caramel towards the front of the palate too. If you go to the front corners of your tongue, then move in a little bit, you'll get a wee kind of woody undertone to this beer as well. But the further you come forward on the palate too, you'll also get a wee touch of a kind of nutty flavour to this one also. Yeah, there's definitely a wee hint of a kind of nutty flavour to this beer as well. I really like how that all goes together. I mean, what I would say about this beer overall is that it has all of the flavours you'd expect. Speech isn't working, my English doesn't work anymore. But yeah, the more that you drink of this beer, I think it does start to become a little bit more Doppelbock-like. As I said though, it's a little bit lighter in alcohol, so it does, you can feel this one sort of pushing towards the cherny, kind of dunkel side of things a little bit. It does have a little bit more kind of lager character to it, if that makes sense, compared to the German ones. The German ones come across as being a little bit more kind of, you know, as a sipper, to be honest with you, whereas these beers, this particular one comes across a little bit, it has got a little bit of the mouthfeel you'd expect from the more kind of dark lager, the chernies and the dunkels and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting that, and I do wonder if that's one of the reasons they've done it like that. That could have been the reason they've made it a little bit lighter in alcohol, so it is something you'd consider a little bit more sort of sessionable and things. It's an interesting way to think about it, but I mean, regardless, we can debate about that all day. The main question is whether it's a good beer or not, and whether it's authentic, and I think it is pretty authentic actually. On the hoppy side of things then, and it is good, I should say that as well, on the hoppy side of things then, yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you get a little bit of that kind of noble earthiness that you would expect. It's quite a nice, just smooth earthiness, but as you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel the earthiness spreads forward a little bit. It becomes a little bit floral on the front corners of the tongue, and then around the very front curve of the palate, it's that little bit lighter and grassy and things, and then behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. So for me, this one comes across, I'm pretty sure there's Northern Brewer in this, just going from the flavours. It's because it's got that noble element to it, but it also has a little bit of that kind of red, juicy fruit to it, which is nice. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, the whole kind of front of your palate where the fruits come out, it does have a little bit of a slightly figgy, juicy figgy quality to it. As you move further towards the tip of the tongue, it has a little bit more sort of blackcurranty, blackberry flavours, and those evolve a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste. Towards the back of that part of the palate too, you've also, you know, it does get a little bit kind of cakey almost. There is a teeny bit of a sort of cakey, fruit bready, probably fruit bready is a better word actually. It's got a little bit of that kind of sultana bread type thing to it as well. You get a little bit of that in this beer, to be honest with you, a sort of raisiny, bready, kind of juicy sort of thing in there too. So it's really interesting how this whole beer goes together. I do like what they've done with this one, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So I think, in fairness, this is probably the most authentic Doppelbock that I've had from Sweden so far. I mean, I'm thinking about the Midwinter Nat that I had from Lokaby Brewery recently. That was a good beer, but it was just a bit more kind of bready, if you like. This one has the brown sugar side of things right, but it's, you know, it is a little bit lighter in alcohol than you'd expect. You would expect the brown sugars to be just a little bit kind of thicker than that, but in terms of the types of flavour and the way the flavours come out in this one, I think they've got it really quite nicely. What I would say is see if you can put it up in alcohol a little bit and bring the brown sugars out just that little bit more. But otherwise, this one is really authentic to what you would expect from the style. It doesn't have that kind of chocolatey element that a lot of the other ones have. I think quite a few other Swedish brewers are doing, such as Grebbestad and Lokaby. I think they're actually putting a bit of chocolate malt into the base as well, because you'll notice the colours of those beers were a little bit blacker than this, whereas this one has obviously just been a little bit more of a long boil. But then again, if there's carafa in this, that could also explain the slightly darker colour, to be honest. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say this beer's kind of it's pretty much right in the middle. It is a straight up mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth. The mouthfeel overall is quite an oily one. It's got a really nice sort of oily mouthfeel to it. In terms of the malt base, it's got a nice smoothness as well. You will find it dries out a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste. There's a bit of sweetness in there too, but the dryness I think starts to take over a little bit. And the sweetness also becomes a little bit more toasty the further you go into the aftertaste as well. There's a little bit of hoppy bitterness, but I think you'd be lucky to get about 20 IBUs out of this beer, in fairness, and you've got some nice juicy red fruity qualities to this one as well. So overall, it's a really kind of interesting beer, and I like how all these flavours go together. So, you know, if you're a fan of the Doppelbock like me, I think you will quite enjoy this one. But there are a few elements in here that make you think it is just a little bit of a stronger sort of dunkel, cherny type thing. But a good beer nonetheless, and I recommend that you have a little look at this one if you get the chance. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Eskilstuna Julbock from Eskilstuna Ölkultur in Eskilstuna. Who would have guessed, out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. A nice take on this style, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So cool to try another German style of beer from these guys. So hopefully I can try a Helles or a Dunkel at some point in the future and see how those turn out. Or even a Schwarzbier, that would be nice as well. Those are becoming more popular in Sweden at the moment actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Eskilstuna Ölkultur as well, and you'll definitely see me review more beers from these guys in the future, and I will see if I can do a little out and about video for you up there as well. So until the next time, Slange just now, and I'll catch you guys very soon. The Eskilstuna Julbock from Eskilstuna Ölkultur in Eskilstuna here in Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers, make sure you check out this beer.